What's up, everybody? This is Ricardo Rodriguez.
And Matthew Messick.
And this is
the Profits Over Wages podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Profits Over Wages podcast, where we do weekly interviews with highly successful business owners and entrepreneurs. We discuss life, business, and entrepreneurship to bring forward the lessons learned from success and failure, and most importantly, have fun while doing it. In episode 60 of the podcast, Matt and I sit down with Colin Egglesfield. Colin is an actor, author, speaker, and real estate investor. He has worked in the entertainment industry where he regularly stars in TV shows and films. He's also a seasoned real estate investor, having done several fix and flip projects and acquired rental properties, as well as a knowledgeable and professional real estate broker. In this episode, we talk about Colin's journey as a model and actor, his real estate investing career, and his recently released book, Agile Artist, Life Lessons from Hollywood and Beyond. Enjoy the show.
Definitely.
All right, it's on. We can get started.
So, Colin, first of all, I want to thank you for being here and giving us your time. I know you're a busy guy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. You have like a really cool, unique story, and I think our listeners will totally appreciate it. So, for those of them who aren't familiar with you, just let them know, who you are and what you do.
Well, I've had a crazy foray into Hollywood over the past, I would say, better part of 20 years. Grew up in the south side of Chicago, south suburbs of Chicago, and went to Illinois Wesleyan for a year, played football, then went to the University of Iowa, studied biology pre-med, thinking I was going to go to medical school. And then randomly one day I heard about an ad on the radio for this model talent search. So it's one of these things where it wasn't necessarily something that I would ever have thought would have happened, but before you knew it, I found myself in Milan, Italy, walking down Giorgio Armani's runway and doing all these fashion shows with crazy designers and living in this hotel with these other models from all over the world. So at 23 years old, I was exposed to a lot of different cultures, a lot of different ideas from all over the world, and it just kind of opened up my horizons to what else is out there other than the Midwest. And shortly thereafter, I found myself in New York City, doing some modeling, and then I jumped into an acting class at the behest of my agent because they start to send you on auditions for commercials. And I, was always shy and kind of insecure growing up, never really felt like, I really had much figured out. But once I jumped into an acting class, I I did find what I felt like was something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I'd finally found my calling, I guess you could say. It was just something that really spoke to me, and it really resonated with me. And over the past 20 years, I've been working between New York and LA, and doing some really amazing projects. Worked with Kate Hudson on a movie called Something Borrowed. Worked on a TV series with Jennifer Love Hewitt called The Client List. Did 3 years on All My Children. Most recently, I did a movie with Sylvester Stallone, my boyhood idol.
Nice. That must have been awesome.
It was phenomenal, man. I mean, and the guy's 73 years old, but he's still, he's as young as...
jacked.
Yes.
He's swoller than ever now.
And just a really cool, down-to-earth, humble guy. And as much as I love acting, I found myself in Los Angeles up to about a year ago, recognizing that it was just harder and harder to make a living as an actor. Much like you see the middle class of America being squeezed out, where it seems like a lot of wealth is now being concentrated in the upper, 1%. It kind of felt like that was the exact same thing that was happening in acting. It was harder for the journeyman middle class actor to make a living at it, and because there's just so many different outlets out there. 10 years ago there was NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox. Now there's 400 channels on your cable, and yes, there's more opportunity for actors, but the audience for each of the different shows has been spread out over all these platforms.
And people don't really watch like cable TV as much anymore at all. Like, I can't remember the last time, besides like a sporting game, that I turned on like NBC.
Yeah, right.
Or like a basketball or a football game. That was like...
You mean network television?
Yeah, network television.
Yeah. And so the amount of money that they pay actors now for all of these different shows because the audience has gone down, the advertising dollars have gone down for each show. So I knew I needed to do something outside of acting to supplement my income, pay rent, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine in Los Angeles, his uncle was rehabbing houses, and this kid was in my acting class, and we got to talking, and we decided to jump into one of these learn how to flip houses programs. And it turned out to be the one that Tarek and Christina from Flipper Flop were a part of. So we learned from Tarek and Christina and Brian Siegel, which is
funny because you actually just saw him walk. Like you came in as he was leaving just now.
Exactly. So Brian is is one of my mentors, and it's funny because when I first found a property, it was a rental property in the south side of Chicago, and ran the numbers and everything looked good. And because it was my first deal, I was just incredibly apprehensive and nervous about it.
Yeah, of course. That's understandable. You've done that before.
Yeah. And so I called Brian. I was like, Brian, and he had looked over the deal, and he was like, look, man, the numbers line up. This is a good property. He's like, just do it. At a certain point, you've got to take that leap.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it was nice to have those kinds of, experienced people in the industry that kind of help you motivate you and just kind of hold your hand or whatnot to make sure that you're not making the mistakes, because you are going to make mistakes in this business, as I'm sure you guys know.
Oh, definitely. I mean, first few deals or the first deal, it's typically either the worst or like the one where everything usually goes wrong. Well, at least for us.
The only way you learn anything is by making mistakes.
Doing it, yeah.
And as you keep going from deal to deal, you learn what mistakes not to make. And then eventually, if you stay in the game long enough, you know all the mistakes not to make, and you rarely make one.
The problem with what I found with these real estate investing courses is that they're a hell of a lot of money. I mean, I paid all in when it was all said and done, with the travel and the going to the seminar, probably around $50,000. And the reason I justified that amount of money was because I was planning on going to medical school, and I mean, gosh, medical school is probably about $200,000 nowadays. So easily, I figured, you know what, if I'm going to do this, yes, I could probably learn a lot of this stuff online and for free. But I knew that if I was going to do this, I needed to be a part of a community that was already doing it, that I could rely on. If I had to do it all over again, what I like about what you guys are doing here at Cobblestone is I would have done it on a smaller scale on this level, where I would have come to you guys and said, hey, listen, I'm new to real estate investing. How do I do this? We teach courses here. It's not $50,000, and you get that hands-on experience working with experienced investors on projects that if you want to get into a project, instead of that $50,000 going towards an education program, I would have said, hey, I've got $50,000. Guys, can you show me how we can invest into a project where I will learn along the way? You guys do it. I will watch you do it. I'll be able to ask questions along the way. Yeah. And then at the end, we're going to turn a profit.
Yeah, if you invested $50,000 with me, I would do a JV deal with you, and then you could learn it along the way.
Definitely.
So I would say, so I would say, because people ask me like, so how did you do it? What would you do? And I always say, don't put your money into those programs. Come to us. We'll partner on a deal, because that's where that's when the rubber meets the road and you actually learn the real stuff. There's only so much you can learn in a seminar.
Yeah, they all teach you all just like the basic stuff. I mean, technically they really can't teach you like all the ins and outs of like just one specific market. So a lot of the time they just teach you the basics.
Yep. And these courses, I mean, I was in Las Vegas when they taught all these, the theory and the principles of real estate investing to a room of like 300 people. But then when I come back to Chicago, they don't know the inspection process in Chicago. They don't know the permits and the regulations. And that's the problem I found myself in, where I hired an architect for one of my first projects. And little did I know, I didn't know what a self-certified architect was. And so this architect happened to be a suburban architect, didn't understand the whole process of the city application process with the architecture plans. And it took us 10 months to get final approval for these plans. And
it's crazy.
It completely eliminated all profit in the deal because those holding costs added up, and it just destroyed that whole deal.
Definitely.
Yeah, the main object or the main viewpoint that you take out of that is, instead of definitely find someone local in your market who's
Yep.
doing what you actually want to do, that has the day-to-day, and hire them as a mentor, invest in a deal with them, as opposed, just a program that's around the country, that's national, where you're not going to get a lot of hand-holding in your local market. You just get the education, but you don't actually get really the mentorship, the day-by-day.
It's general mentorship. It's not specific to your market, and you need that specific mentorship.
Yeah, and even if you don't have money for mentorship, I mean, we've had people reach out to us where they're like, "Hey, I'll come in and work a couple days, 4 hours a day for free. Just show me or teach me for, while I'm there. Just let me know what you need help with, and I'll do it for free for you guys. As long as you mentor me through, a deal or two.
You can pay with time instead of money.
Yeah,
or resources. Go find some deals.
Yep.
We'll partner with you.
Yeah. A lot of people don't have money when they get into this, and so they think they can't get involved, but it's not true. It's if you can provide value in other ways other than
definitely.
financially, then you can get involved with this.
So you said you went through this program, and then afterwards you found your first rental that you wanted to do. You ran it by your mentor from the program, and then you bought it. And then what? And when was that? And how was your kind of career scaled from there in real estate?
Yeah, so that was 4 years ago. And actually, my mom and I partnered on this deal, and we used money from our IRA accounts. And I didn't realize this, and a lot of people don't realize that you can actually use money in your IRA account.
Yeah.
You can actually borrow against money in your IRA account. So, an average IRA account out there, if you asked anyone what their IRA account was generating, they wouldn't be able to tell you.
Yeah.
And when I looked into it, the S&P over the past 100 years, the average return has been about 7%. Now, the past 10 years, we've been experiencing better than that, but when you average it out over a 100-year period, it's about 7%. But then what a lot of people don't realize is that on top of that 7%, the IRA custodian or manager is taking their 1.25% in fees, and then the company where the IRA is at, they'll take a little bit of that. So you're probably looking closer to like 5, maybe 6% return in your retirement account.
And you also got inflation as well.
And inflation. And so when you're really truly trying to create a retirement plan for yourself, and this is something that I wish more high schools would teach, because, I mean, when are you going to use Algebra 2 or trigonometry? They should be teaching how to
really good in
prepare.
trigonometry, so never able to apply it to anything.
They should teach you how to prepare for the real world and what it looks like 40 years down, 50 years down the road. When do you want to retire, and what does that look like? If you wanted to retire now, they say that you need at least $1.8 million in your account to be able to retire on if you plan on living for the next 20 years of your life. Because nowadays life expectancy is
it's getting crazy high.
It's getting high, and at 65 years old, most people are expected to live for another at least 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that if you want to maintain the same lifestyle that you're accustomed to, then it requires a certain amount of money. And what I tell people is, if that's what it's going to cost, and then if you add on the cost of inflation, work backwards. So let's say $2.5 million 20 years from now, work backwards. How are you going to get to that number? And if 5% in your retirement account is not going to do it, then what are you going to do? And real estate is a great way to diversify your investments and be able to generate a better return with a very secured investment.
That was a flip that you did with your mom?
The asset. No, it's a rental property.
Oh, you still own it?
Yeah. So I bought this for $170,000, and the crazy thing is, this property was on the market for like 400 days.
Wow.
And so everyone was looking at this thing like, oh, well, there must be something wrong with it. And this real estate agent that I first started looking at, she had bought some rental properties in that area, and she's like, check this one out. And I went to go check it out. It's a frame structure in South Shore, and looked at it. It was fully rented. It was cash flowing, and when I ran the numbers were good. And the great thing about the South Side of Chicago, the taxes are low, and so this property, we ended up buying it for $169,000. It's a 4-unit.
Nice.
One of the tenants is Section 8, so that income is guaranteed every month. The other 3 are market tenants. But we're making about $3,500 a month on this asset, and
Nice.
our net profit on it is about $1,500 a month. And when I first looked at it and looking at these numbers, I was showing them to people, and they're like, "Well, that's crazy.
Too good to be true.
Too good to be true. There must be something."
It is the South Side. A lot of them do seem very good, too good to be true in the South Side of Chicago.
But then I realized when I went over there to go look at the property, I was there with my agent and I was with my contractor because there was a couple of things we needed to take care of.
Yeah.
And I looked across the street and there was a guy that punched a hole in the side of it was a Chevy Blazer. It was parked just in this
While you were
field.
there, he punched a hole?
You punched a
While
hole
we were there,
through, like the glass or the metal?
the
Like,
side window of this Chevy Blazer, he punched
Just
through the
because?
side of it and opened up the door, was scavenging inside the truck and inside this Chevy Blazer. And we looked over, he looked over at us, and then he just acted like
Just kept going.
we didn't even exist.
Did he drive off?
No, he's
he just,
rubbed
like,
in there, shut the door, and then walked away.
Grab the change.
Wow. Like, didn't even
And I
care.
was like, you know what? Maybe this is not such a good idea.
Yeah.
But the one thing that made me realize that, okay, maybe this could be, a decent opportunity was my real estate agent said that she had been investing there for the past 3 years. And she said the area has improved. And this is the thing with real estate investing. You've got to look at the future. And yes, that one incident could have made someone be like, you know what? I'm not doing this. But
Like that one.
But I was like, you know what? This isn't a huge investment. Let's just kind of see what happens with this. And fortunately, that was 4 years ago. I just had it appraised. I'm doing a refi on it. And it was 170 when we bought it. It just appraised at $280,000.
Oh,
shit.
wow. That's awesome.
So over a 4-year period,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
amazing.
that and you've been
Passively.
getting the rental income as well. So.
Yes. So
And the tax depreciation.
yeah,
and
so
all that.
that's the kind of stuff that is going on in the South Side. Now, I
So-
did buy another 4-unit down at 87th and Exchange, and that one was not as good because the apartments were smaller, so the rent wasn't as high. I could only get $600 per unit compared to $900, $1,000 for the other 4-unit, and the tenants, it was just difficult to collect rent over there for whatever reason. So we ended up selling that one. So you got to be careful, and it is kind of hit or miss. But
Yeah, it really is. I mean, one time I went to look it up. I always remember this. We actually didn't end up buying that property because of that reason. Not like you were talking about somebody breaking into a car. I was looking at this property somewhere in the South Shore, and as I'm walking up the stairs, and I'm about to put in the lockbox code, out of my peripheral, I'll just see people running, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it's pa 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 pa, 6 or 7 shots, and I'm over here it was one of those lockbox codes that is not the numbers, it's actually letters. So there's how many alphabet letters. There was one that was a Z, and it was
No, I remember what it was.
oh my
It was
God.
LAR.
And it was I was just trying to open it, and I'm over here shaking
Yeah.
holy shit, I'm about to get shot. I don't want to die here.
I was
Needless to say, I stayed in that house for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I didn't even look at it, and I just
It was a really
left.
nice house. I wanted to buy it. But
It was
we
really
weren't-
nice.
We weren't that great at analyzing numbers yet, but it was it was a cool one because it was only it was a 90s house, or even I think it was a 2000s
No, it's
house.
built in 2006.
Yeah, so it was just someone
Mm-hmm.
who lived there, and it was just dirty and messy, and some things were broke.
Mm-hmm.
But it'd be a really light rehab. But I wanted to buy it, but Ricardo said, "No, there's gunshots." I'm like, "It's a South Side." I mean,
yeah, I would say my advice is
pass on it.
we hire contractors that actually live in those areas, so they know the area. They know how they know the residents. They know the times, and if there is a shooting in the area, they're like, we're not going to go in that area today because it's just going to be there's going to be too much.
I want to go back to that first deal you were talking about that you
Yeah.
did with your mom, the rental. Just for those people who are not familiar with investing with, your retirement plan into rental properties, can you kind of explain the process of how that goes?
So, if you have a 401k, me as a as an actor, we are free agents. So I had a SEP. It wasn't an IRA, but it's essentially a similar type of retirement account.
Yeah.
And what I learned in the real estate investment courses was you can move money from your 401k or your retirement account into what's called a self-directed IRA account. And there's companies out there. The one I used was Horizon Trust, and they're great. They help facilitate the transfer of the money from the IRA, 401k or whatever it is, into this self-directed IRA account. Technically, it's still inside your IRA. So
Like you're not taking it out, you're just redirecting
you're
it.
transferring it to another.
So instead of investing in
retirement account.
stocks, you're investing in the properties.
Exactly. So what people don't realize is that when money is in your 401k, your 401k administrator is investing in Apple or Southwest Airlines or whatever it is. So these are companies that are in the free market, but your money is invested in those companies, but it's still inside of the retirement account. Mm-hmm. So with a self-directed IRA, you're essentially just moving that money, transferring it to another IRA retirement account, which is now you're able to then invest in pretty much anything that is not a collectible. So you could invest in a Subway sandwich franchise, or
but not like gold coins.
You can't invest in gold coins or wine. Anything collectible you're not allowed to invest in, but you could buy, I was told you could buy like season tickets to the Chicago Bears and sell them to.
They let you do that?
Yeah. So
Nice.
pretty much anything where you're making income. And one of the things you can obviously do is
About
buy.
to get Bears season tickets.
Yeah.
They're pretty good. If you got them a year ago, they were probably pretty low, and then they made the playoffs last year.
But a lot of financial planners will not. A lot of them don't know about this, and if they do, they won't tell you about it
Should get
because
Bulls season tickets.
That's
That's
what I was about
so
to say.
shitty right now.
So you should buy them for the next 10 years.
yeah, it's a good idea.
They only can go up.
But a lot of financial planners don't tell you about this because once that that money is moved over to the self-directed IRA company, then they don't earn a commission.
Yeah,
Because they're not
Because you're not taking it
They're
out.
not saying, okay, let's invest in this mutual fund or this REIT or whatever it is.
They're not getting a broker
They're
fee.
not getting their broker fee.
A lot of financial planners are really just salespeople
Yep.
that are selling financial products.
So
everyone.
Yeah,
thinks
you
that they
need
know
to
everything.
find a fiduciary who has no ties to any specific, company like a Vanguard or a Charles Schwab or any of these companies. They're basically independent brokers who advise you on where to invest your money.
So you ended up buying it. I guess ended up investing in an LLC, and then that LLC that you own with your mom, then that owns the property, right?
You can either set up an LLC that is owned within your IRA, or, and that's the way I would advise doing it, because the way in which we did it was I took some of my money, my mom took some of her money, and we bought the property together. And so on title, our IRA trusts were on title. So it was Horizon Trust for benefit of Colin
I see.
Egglesfield, account number 17, whatever, and then,
If you want to take it to another level, don't even put your name on there. Just leave the account number. Especially like someone like you, or they're going to search for it.
I
But
mean,
yeah.
regardless, it was just long and cumbersome. And then whenever we needed to pay, let's say someone
God.
would come over there and shovel the snow, I can't write that snow removal guy a check. I have to fill out a form from Horizon Trust, and it says, okay, can you please write a check and send it to Joe's Snow Removal? And then I have to fill out the form, the address, and then I have to sign it, and then I have to email that into Horizon Trust, and then they would then send the check to the snow removal guy. Whereas if you set up an LLC within the IRA, then you have what's called checkbook control,
Right.
so that you can write checks on behalf of the
makes
company
sense.
that is held within the IRA trust. And that's the way I would advise doing it, because it got to be a pain in the
Right,
butt.
paying $50 for somebody to go cut the grass.
Right.
And it would take so much time to fill out this form, just to maintain the property, that we ended up actually taking the property out of the IRA, which caused a taxable event. But in this way, I'm able to do a refi, because trying to do a refi within an IRA trust is like trying to break into Fort Knox. lenders will not want to lend on a property that's held by a trust because they have very little recourse.
Yeah, because their retirement accounts have no
on the loan.
recourse, right? So it's like you could basically just do it and just stop paying your mortgage.
Like, who are you going to
Exactly.
foreclose on?
Yeah.
Right. They can't foreclose when a property's in trust. So trying to get a lender so I wanted to tap into all this equity and I wasn't able to. So I knew that, okay, I'm going to have to pay tax on pulling the property out. But after we do the refi, I'm generating the income. It's going to keep
Right.
appreciating and it'll allow me to then get into more properties.
Which is crazy that it appraised for like $100,000 more than what you got it for. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
South Shore is blowing up.
Yep.
They're doing the presidential library over there and everything that's right by the lake.
Yep.
So like, I guess kind of go back a little bit. So before you started acting, like you had you didn't do plays in high school. You did none of that, or like you never actually thought that you were going to be an actor,
No,
like at all?
never. No. I was just so nervous and dorky growing up that the last thing I wanted to do was draw attention to myself. One thing I was good at was sports. So I was skinny and fast, and I could catch a football, and I was, pretty
Did you
decent
guys
in
ever
baseball.
play? Well,
Yeah,
I
did you
guess
say
you're a
you
little bit older. Yeah.
Did you go to Marion?
I went to Marion
Yeah,
Catholic.
nice.
Yeah.
Like we
And,
grew up in Jason Towns actually. I was in Park Forest and you were at
Yeah.
Crete.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you go to Rich East?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like probably like 80% of the kids I went to middle school with went to like Marion. And I went
Okay.
to Rich East instead.
Yeah. And my older sister was the one that was really into theater and going to play auditions. So I would tag along with her to these auditions.
Is she
but-
jealous? No.
No, I mean she loves being a mom, and she's got 4 girls, and she's so
Sounds like a
busy
full-time
doing
job.
all that stuff.
Oh, that is.
Yeah. So she lives vicariously through me, and
So I kind of wanted to talk about someone like you're doing some like really cool stuff in the south side of Chicago for like low income housing.
yeah. So there's just having been down in the South Side investing, and I've done 6 rehab properties that I've purchased, rehab, and sold.
Yeah.
So just being in these neighborhoods, I've gotten to know some of the residents down there and some of the programs that are making a concerted effort to help bolster these communities. One of these organizations is called Neighborhood Housing Services, and they're a nonprofit that helps low-income families with like down payment assistance to get into their own home.
Yeah.
And I've gone to some of these fundraisers for some of these organizations, and the NHS building was at 110th and Michigan Avenue, and they've recently moved out of that building, and it's in Roseland, and it's a decent 2-story, like 10,000 square foot building.
Yeah.
And since they moved out of it, it's essentially vacant. And I've met the alderman in that area, and they're basically like, here, we'll let you have this building at a very reasonable price if you do something with it, because obviously a vacant building draws, the wrong kind of attention, and the community is not earning tax dollars from a vacant building. So I met a guy who runs a nonprofit called Project Osmosis. His name is Vernon Lockhart, and he is very active in the South Side of Chicago, providing opportunities for kids, specifically in the area of the arts. Mm-hmm. So with a lot of school programs being cut because of budget cuts, so like athletics and band and art programs in a lot of South Side of Chicago schools have been eliminated. He has this organization that exposes kids to like graphic design and architecture and
Nice.
Vocations that are just not necessarily taught in regular high schools. And they are looking for, he told me they were looking for a permanent headquarters for them to be able to come in, have kids be able to come in off the street and have computers and a space to display art and do fundraisers.
That's awesome.
So it's essentially a community center. And when I went into this building, I saw that there's upstairs office units that could be turned into residential apartments. So I had an architect go in there, and I just, it's all about networking. I met this woman who is now, she published my book, but her son is married to a woman who is an architect, and she said that she'd be happy to come down and just do this as a pro bono type of thing. So they put together these
Nice.
architecture plans, and so we have everything set up to turn this building into a community center / residential apartment building.
Nice.
And what's crazy is I was out in Los Angeles about a month ago, and I was doing an interview on Hallmark's Home and Family talk show. And I was talking about the stuff that I'm doing in the south side of Chicago. And about a week later, I randomly get a phone call from this guy. And he said, yeah, I saw you. My wife and I saw you on Home and Family. We're interested in what you're doing. You're doing a lot of great things. We're retired. We're at a place in our lives where we want to give back. So I told him about this community center. And he said, well, how much is it going to cost to get this thing off the ground? And the preliminary numbers I was given was about a $2 million project.
Like for the build out and
to the conversion, build out.
Because it's now offices. Now you have to add apartments. That means like multiple
bathrooms,
kitchens, multiple bathrooms.
Plumbing, exactly. So it's a pretty expensive conversion. We could probably do it for. I know we can do it for cheaper, but this is just one bid that we got. So I told this guy, and he's like, "All right, well, I'm sitting on about $170 million right now, and my wife and I just know that." We can't. $70 million. Yeah, he's like, we can't take it with us, so we're interested in potentially doing something, and we like what we see. Send us a proposal. So I put together this proposal, sent it to them, and they're now looking at it. So
nice.
I mean, who knows if they're actually going to pull the trigger on this thing? But what I've always recognized is that when you help other people with whatever they need, you end up getting it returned like tenfold. So we'll see if this ends up being what it could be, but at least it's nice to know that there are people out there that really care.
It's definitely
about
a cool
making
project, man. There's a lot of extracurriculars are the first things to get like cut off when budgeting goes down. So it sucks that like that area doesn't have like the tax income to like be able to sustain the schools for them to provide things for kids and keep them off the streets. So.
And so, like, when I was living in New York City, I got asked to come down to this community center in the south of Manhattan. It was called The Door, still there. And it's a place for kids can go and get help with their homework after school. They have pro bono legal services. So if these kids if kid gets in trouble with the law, then these lawyers can help them out. They have food. It's just a great place for kids can get off the street. And so my idea is to do something similar in the south side of Chicago, because this is a thriving, very essential part of lower Manhattan. And I ended up going down to this community center. It was when I was working on All My Children. Every other Thursday, I would go down and tutor high school kids. From 4 to 6 o'clock. And so I met a lot of these kids who would come from the Bronx and from Queens and all, because there's very few of these places out there. So my idea is to do something similar in the south side of Chicago in this Roseland community.
That's awesome.
And with now with this opportunity zone money that's out there, I've talked to a banker at PNC Bank named Tony Smith, and he's like, look, we're sitting on a ton of money from these opportunity zones, and for people who don't understand what those are, that's essentially over the past year, each state was allowed to designate certain underserved areas in their state as opportunity zones, where people are allowed to invest in these areas and defer capital gains tax for a certain amount of years, depending on how long you have that money in these opportunity zones. So it's a way for people to pay less capital gains on earnings that they've made. Let's say you sell some stocks and you owe like $100,000. You can put that $100,000 into a fund that invests in real estate and not have to pay tax on that $100,000.
Oh, it's awesome.
And if you keep it in for the full 10 years, the tax savings is insane. Not only that, but you then have the opportunity to own a piece of real estate that is cash flowing as well.
Is that building in an opportunity zone?
That building is.
Nice.
One thing I want to add, the one stipulation too, is that the rehab amount has to be more than the purchase amount. So it really focuses on, vacant, dilapidated properties that need a lot of work. So, they're not just like vacant buildings sitting all around the country.
Yep.
And it's real estate and also businesses you can invest in. And then after the 10 years, you don't have to pay the capital gains tax is no longer deferred. It's just like forgiven essentially. You don't have to pay it at all.
No, cool. You recently released a book, right?
Yep.
What's it called?
It's called Agile Artist.
And because I know you're like you're here at the brokerage. I remember you were always like, I was up until like 5 a.m. writing the book. I'm like, holy shit. How long did it take you to write the book?
It took 8 months. and it came out June 15th. And so I've been on this book tour, traveling around the country, promoting it.
Nice.
And people ask me, why'd you write a book? And I was like, there was no way I would have ever thought that I could write a book. But I was giving a talk at this social media seminar and here in Chicago, and this woman, I got introduced to her, and she said, you have an interesting story. Have you ever thought about writing a book? And I said, no. And she's like, well, I'm a publisher. I can help you write the story. And when I got to think about it, over the past few years, I would get invited back into my acting classes because my teachers would be like, okay, you've worked with all these amazing actors, and will you come and talk to the newer students and tell them what it's like to actually go through a network studio audition, and what's it like to be on set, what's expected of you. And I also, I'm a cancer survivor, so I've done a lot of charity work, raising money for St. Jude Hospital and Children's Hospital Los Angeles. So I meet a lot of kids and people and families who have gone through similar experiences that I have. And there's a lot of great mentors, coaches, and teachers that I relied on growing up and that have helped me get through all the challenges that I've had to overcome in my life. And I felt like what a great way to be able to put everything that I've learned over the past 20 years from working in Hollywood and learning how to overcome obstacles and overcoming cancer, and just put it all in one place where people can go and just gain some insight and inspiration. Because to me, as exciting as it is to travel around the world and make movies and work with Sylvester Stallone, what really matters to me is knowing that I'm making a positive difference in people's lives. So,
definitely. Wait, so why'd you write the book?
And so it's available on Amazon.com, and I've got like 39 5-star reviews right now.
That's awesome.
So it's doing well. So.
Nice.
How difficult was it to actually write it? Because I feel like I journal a lot, so like just because I just have to get like thoughts out of my head like most of the time.
Yeah.
Like how difficult was it actually to write for? Did you actually write for those full 8 months, or was it like, oh, I just gotta push it off and then you give yourself a deadline and actually get it done in like 3 months?
I was literally in front of my computer probably on average like 4 days out of the week for 8 months.
Damn.
Sometimes I'd sit there for 10 hours just sitting there and reworking and editing and rearranging. And so and then I would kind of go on a tangent and realize, okay, this is a whole nother book. I got to like reel it back in here. But yeah, it was a very challenging experience, but cathartic, because having lived through the World Trade Center experience as well, I had a lot of trauma associated with that. And so just writing about it kind of helped me get through it all. And what I essentially talk about in the book is, if you really have something that matters to you that you care about, for me it was acting.
Yeah.
But before 9/11, I'd only done 2 guest star roles. One was on Law & Order SVU as a male escort, and the other one was jumping into bed with Jenny Garth from 90210 in my underwear and a glass of wine. And so I had 2 small, tiny, minor roles, and the idea of moving out to Hollywood, becoming a professional actor, was kind of crazy. But I was living across the street from the World Trade Center when all of that happened. And on the 18th floor, facing the towers, on that morning when I saw people hanging out the tops of the towers, and then after a bit, I started to see people start jumping out of the top of the towers, because they couldn't escape. And the idea of being faced with either staying up at the top of those towers and burning to death, or jumping out at 1,000 feet to your death. I mean, how horrible to have been faced with that kind of a decision.
Right.
And it made me recognize that, you know what? Life can end in an instant. And I guarantee you, if you'd ask those people up at the top of those towers if they had a second chance at life, I guarantee you they wouldn't let any negative thoughts or anyone stop them from going after what they really truly cared about. So for me, it was like, you know what? If I was up trapped at those towers and God or whoever came to me and said, hey, you've got a second chance at life, what are you going to do? I said, well, for me, I really love acting. I don't know if it's going to work out, but I at least want to give it a shot. So I went out to Los Angeles, and I pursued it, and I went after my dream. And, it definitely isn't easy. But when you have something that you care about that inspires you and you put a plan together, I'm telling you, anything can happen. And that's what I essentially talk about in the book. And I also talk about how to invite more creativity in your life. So as, most people, when we're younger, we're very creative.
Yeah.
And it seems like as we get older, we just kind of lose touch with creativity and the kinds of things that kids normally would do. Like kids are willing to try things. They're not afraid to fail.
Yeah.
And I think as we get older, we're just afraid of looking good and afraid of looking stupid.
Is this Instagram worthy?
Afraid of failing. Is this Instagram worthy? And so as actors, we have to get over that very quickly.
Yeah.
One of my acting teachers in the first day of acting class said, okay, you have to prepare a song. And I was like, well, I don't sing. He said, doesn't matter. So I show up in my class in front of 25 people I've never met before. And
What did you sing?
He's like, all right, Colin, new student, Colin Egglesfield. He's coming into the class. And so, he's like, come on up. And I get up to the front of the class. And I sang, fly me to the moon, let me play amongst the stars. And
song.
I ended up forgetting a verse and had to start over. And then afterwards, he's like, all right, cool. Now sing that song like a dog. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, bark like a dog, as if a dog was singing that song. I was like, ruff, 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 ruff. He's like, louder. And I'm like, ruff, 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 ruff. Like barking this song. It was just the stupidest, most...
Is it just to get you over the fear of being like embarrassed in front of other people?
Looking stupid. Because afterwards, some people were laughing, some people just kind of were sitting
And
there.
they've all probably done it already.
Yeah,
so
they
like,
all did it. And so afterwards, it's like, okay, great. Now that you made a complete ass of yourself in front of all these people, you can feel free to do anything.
Nice.
And he was right. And those are the little strategies that, as actors, you've got to just completely walk into an audition being vulnerable and open and honest and authentic. And growing up, I always felt like I kind of had to hide, and I was afraid to let people see who I really was because I was afraid of being made fun of,
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I recognize that the only real way to have true connection with people, in order to really have good relationships, in order to be successful in anything, people need to trust you. They need to feel that they can connect with you.
Right.
And like I'm sure you guys know, with real estate investing, no one is going to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars to rehab a house unless they trust you, unless they feel like they have a connection with you. And so it's important that we just practice cultivating authenticity and honesty for us to be able to be successful in anything that we do in life.
What's your favorite story that you shared in the book? Do you have a favorite story that you shared in the book?
Yeah, I would say one of them is the power of manifestation. It sounds kind of hocus pocus and whatever, but
Like The Secret?
One of the sub chapters I have is called "The Secret to the Secret," because I think a lot of people misconstrue the whole idea of the secret or the law of attraction. And for those of you who don't know what The Secret is, it is a movie and a book that talks about how everything in the world is basically vibrations of energy. We as human beings, we are made up of tiny little atoms and cells, and all of that vibrates at a certain frequency. And when we're sick and we're depressed and we're not feeling great, we vibrate at a low frequency. When we're in love, when we're excited, that energy expands, and whatever energy you're vibrating with is the energy that you're going to invite more of into your life. That's the law of attraction. And so I was going on these auditions, and I was getting close, but I wasn't sealing the deal. I was starting to get to be the final 2 or 3 guys in these auditions at the Warner Brothers studio lots, and I just was like, man, what's missing? Yeah. I've got the talent. Obviously, if I didn't have the talent, I wouldn't be getting this far. But there was something I knew mentally that just wasn't quite clicking, and I wasn't, just making it happen. So I went to go see this woman. She was a life coach. Her name's Wendy Spiller. And she had me do this visualization exercise where she said, close your eyes. What would be your dream role? I said, World War II love story. And she said, okay, where are you? And I said, I'm in Paris. She said, okay, who are you doing the scene with? I said, Gwyneth Paltrow. And she said, okay, who's directing? I said, Steven Spielberg. So she's like, okay, what color is the sky? What does the air feel like on your face? What does the sun feel like on your face? What does the street look like? She had me do this 20-minute visualization exercise down to the specifics. She said, okay, Steven yells action. Gwyneth, you're doing the dialogue. Steven yells cut. Gwyneth gives you a kiss. She puts her arms around you. Steven comes over, says, great job. The movie is over. Now put a golden ball of light around all of that. Breathe that in. Breathe that down into every cell of your body until you can feel it. It's not enough to have positive thoughts. Mm-hmm. You have to feel it. Much like if you want to have a new car, go test drive that car. See what it smells like. Go drive it. See what it feels like. If you really want to have something in your life, you got to not just think about it, but you got to feel what that experience is like. So literally 2 weeks after this visualization exercise, I get a call from my agent saying I have to go pick up a script. So I did that. It turned out to be a World War II love story. I went in for the audition the next day. They said, okay, you're one of the 3 guys we're going to bring back on Friday for the final audition to do a chemistry read with the lead actress. Her name was Brooke Langton. She had just done a movie with Keanu Reeves called The Replacements. It wasn't Gwyneth Paltrow, but still cute. And,
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is the first DVD I ever owned. It's awesome.
And so I go in for this audition.
It's so random.
And had a great audition. And my agent called me later that day and was like, Colin, they loved you. And I was like, oh, awesome. That's great. So I got it. And he's like, no, but they really loved you.
You still did great though.
And I was like, that doesn't do any good, man. He's like, I know, but I just wanted to tell you that they really liked what you did. And so just keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, oh man, another one,
Who did they pick?
They picked some. I don't even remember who it was.
Damn it.
So on Monday,
what's the name of it? Look it up.
It's called.
Keep going.
So anyway, on Monday, I get a call from my agent saying, "Hey, Colin, the guy that they hired for the movie on Friday, he just got offered a role in a Steven Spielberg movie, so he's going off to do that. So they want you to come back and audition again, and now this time they're bringing in another actor." To compare you with. So I went back in, auditioned, I ended up booking the role.
Oh, nice.
So that movie is called Beautiful Dreamer, and you can rent it, for probably like 50 cents on whatever. But the point is, 2 weeks prior, I was sitting on this woman's couch doing this visualization exercise about a World War II love story with a Steven Spielberg component, and 2 weeks later, I'm doing this movie, this World War II love story, and there's a Steven Spielberg component to it. Yeah. And some people may say, well, that's just like coincidence. Yeah. But all I know is whenever I've done this visualization, vision boards where you put pictures up on a wall, and it's all about creating that feeling of whatever it is that you want to have in life. So for me in my real estate investment career, I have a whole vision board of okay, I've got I've my dream house up on a board in front of my desk. So every day I can see what my dream house looks like. And I know I'm going to have that house one day. I've got my goals for my 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals. And in my real estate investment course, something really interesting that one of my mentors made us do was had us write out our, month, year goals. And then he said, okay, now go home tonight and I want you to write out what your 100-year legacy is going to look like. And it made me realize, wow, that's interesting. When I'm long gone, what do I want the world to have been made better by from me being in it? And for me, when I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I have an opportunity to direct a lot of resources to the south side of Chicago. It's underserved. It could use some support, not a handout, but some support in helping some of the people down there, providing job opportunities and nice houses for people to live in that are inexpensive. And if I can put together this community center, and whether it's the Colin Egglesfield Community Center or the Microsoft Community Center, whatever. I mean, it's not that important. What's important to me is that, life was a little bit better because I was in it.
It's a good exercise. What do you want your legacy to look like 100 years from now?
Yeah.
That definitely gives you something to think about. For those of you who want to check out The Secret, it's actually on Netflix if you want to watch it. So just go on Netflix, search The Secret. Do you want to go into the questions?
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
No.
You are worth 4. Yeah.
So like these are cool entrepreneur type questions that bring out good dialogue. So it's kind of like a rapid fire round.
Okay.
This one's probably good. What living or dead person other than family members do you most admire?
I admire. I mean, my dad passed away 3 years ago. I really admired him. He was an obstetrician. He delivered over 9,000 babies in his career.
Oh.
And I was doing a book signing just last week in Oak Brook, and a woman came up to me, and she was his nurse at his office.
I thought you were going to say that he delivered her.
But I've had other people come up to me and say, "Hey, your dad delivered my baby," and then their daughter had delivered. My dad had delivered their baby, so like 2 generations of babies being delivered in that family, and so that's someone I admire. I also would have to say that I would have loved to have met Einstein. Maybe had dinner with him. I think that would have been pretty amazing. And Michelle Pfeiffer. Yeah. She's still living. I'd still love to have dinner with her.
Have you met her before?
No, I haven't.
Bro, just put it out there in the universe.
Yeah, she's still acting, man.
Yeah.
Go
Actually,
audition for some of those roles.
a doctor that I knew at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, his wife emailed me like 2 weeks ago and said, "Hey, are you in LA? I want to set you up with Sharon Stone." I was like, "What? Are you kidding?" So next time I go out to LA, I'll have to let you know how that
I
goes.
don't know who any of these people are. I'm like so
Basic
not in
instinct.
touch with like
Ricardo
pop
Young,
culture.
and then
Like, can't even put face to both of those names actually.
Ricardo migrated here. He was like a teenager, so he's like
Watch Basic
it's the first
Instinct.
time.
You have to
Yeah,
watch that.
How old
movie.
is that?
25 years, probably 20.
I'll tell you after.
Hold on. What is one thing that you find to be true that most people would disagree with?
That you have to pretend that you got it all figured out. I think there's strength in saying that you don't know something. I think it's important that if if you're new to something or if you don't have it figured out, just be honest. And I think the worst thing you can do is just make people believe that you've got it, something more figured out than you do. I guess
Because you probably look dumber if you just like fake the fact that that you know what somebody's talking about.
Yeah, just own up to whatever it is that's going on.
Be authentic and genuine. What habits helped make you successful?
I would say I learned a lot from playing sports growing up, in the sense that in order to be able to score a touchdown or hit a baseball, there's a hell of a lot of hours of practice that go into doing that. But if you have that dream, that idea of scoring that touchdown and having the crowd cheer and you winning the game, that's the thing that gets you up in the morning. It's at 6 o'clock in the morning when you don't want to go to the gym or you don't want to run that last lap, but knowing that by putting in this work, it's going to pay off in the future. That to me, I learned very early on that when you commit to something, and whether or not you want to do it or not, you just do it because you're committed to it. When you say that you're going to join the football team, or if you say you're going to be in a relationship, you do whatever it takes to make it work.
What gets you through the tough times?
My family, my friends, a good bottle of red wine, my dog James, and just
Do you call him Jim or just straight up
I call him
James?
Jimmy.
Jimmy?
Yeah. And also knowing...
I'm a huge fan of dogs with like people's names.
Yeah. His name was James Taylor.
Like my name's
Hugo?
Hugo.
Yeah.
We were gonna name him like a Joey or something like that.
There's a guy in my neighborhood. His dog, his name is Steve.
Nice. Steve, come back here.
Yeah. But also recognizing that nothing lasts forever. So if something is crappy in your life, just know that it's temporary, and know that if you just, keep putting one foot in front of the other, things are going to change, and keep focusing on where you want to be and not so much on the current circumstances, and you'll get through it.
If you had one piece of advice to someone just starting out in either acting or real estate, what would it be?
Get a mentor. Find someone who has been doing it and who's successful at it. And however you can provide value for them, say, listen, I'll buy you dinner, or
Come work for free.
I'll go work for free. I just want to learn. I just want to absorb what it is that you do. And, feel free to, if you think that there's something that of value that you think I could learn, by all means, please.
Not only that, but if just being around somebody who's successful, you get to see like what habits they have, what they do, like
Right.
what their daily routine looks like.
Yeah.
And there's always that saying, right? You're the average of the 4 people that you hang out with the most. So if you start
Exactly.
hanging out with that type of people, the frequency which you think, the way that you set your goals and everything is just gonna exponentially go from there.
Yep.
If you actually put some sort of action behind it.
Yeah. So we all have biologically, it's metaphorically a thermostat. So they say that, if you grew up and your parents made only $50,000 a year, you may think that, okay, whether subconsciously or not, you're, and they say, okay, a $50,000 a year wage is like 50 degrees. So you may be a 50 degreer. And if you're around people who, their parents made $200,000 a year. So that person might be like a 90 degreer. If you're, operating at 50 degrees and you're around people at 90 degrees, you're not going to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't necessarily like to associate with people who make more money than them. But if you really want to be in that level, you've got to start getting out of your comfort zone.
Oh, definitely.
And being around people that are in, who are doing what you want to be doing. And that's why they say people who win the lottery, usually after a few years, they're back broke to the level that they were before the lottery because they're just not used to having that
ball
kind
out
of
of
money.
control for
They
like a
just
year.
ball out of control, and they're like, they think that they're only worth that certain amount of lifestyle.
They could probably just put that in an account and live off the interest for life.
Yeah, if they knew Howard,
Right.
sought it out. But yeah, no, easily. I'm glad you said friend and mentor, because we happen to have a real estate mentorship program here with, if you want to learn locally, we'll throw that in the
Can
show
you tell
notes.
me about that? So, because I do have people who ask me, like, so how can I get involved? What's it involved? So, like,
Oh, look,
is it
someone's
like
interested.
every Monday night you guys?
Yes, we do a 6-week mentorship program, Monday nights, 6 to 9, where we go over an entire business from the beginning to the end of, going through finding deals, how to analyze them, how to raise the funding for them, how to manage the projects in the rehab, pick the finishes, how to sell them, and then also how to scale your business, build your reputation, and then, start to hire people. And then we also do 2 private tours of our properties that we have here in Chicago on 2 Saturdays in the morning. We get to see real life projects and check everything out and, asking you questions that you want. Because then, going from the classroom to real life in the field, then it makes it all real and it's kind of full circle. And then that is followed by a full 12 months of mentorship for helping people, find their deals, because we have the brokerage here of Cobblestone where we have agents that can find people deals. We can help them with the funding with our lending company. And then we have the construction company where we can do it. So it's almost like a full service, turnkey real estate investing business that we've set up for anyone to come in and do that on their own, with our assistance. And our first student actually just got his first contract, or his first property under contract a couple weeks ago, and been working on the funding all day for him yesterday. And I got some really good quotes for him, and we should be closed by the end of the week. And
Awesome.
The numbers are exactly like the last deal that we closed ourselves, where it was like probably one of our flagship deals, where like everything was perfect. And so I feel totally confident with I'm really happy for him. And I'm
Cool.
like, dang, I wish I would have had that deal.
How did you guys find that property?
Which
Oh,
one
it was
are
on
you talking
the
about?
it was on the MLS, and it was listed high. And then I think Greg had reached out a couple of times. He's been following it for like 6 months. And
Oh, the
then,
one on Harding?
Yeah. And then
He's been following that house for 2 years.
really,
Yeah.
yeah. So then it was listed, but it was listed too high. And then after you put in offers enough times, they finally was just like the right time, and then they accepted the offer. And yeah.
Cool.
Do you have a morning routine?
Coffee.
Oh yeah, that's mine too.
Are you a 10 a.m.er like Matt?
No, I mean, I'm usually up by 8, but it depends. My days are usually so different that it's hard to have a routine.
Yeah.
If I know that I'm going to have a full day, I'll usually go to the gym first thing in the morning. I am not necessarily a morning person. I prefer to, it's almost as if like my brain is just more active and functioning at like 2 o'clock in the morning than 8 in the morning. So I usually stay up later and sleep in. But like I said, usually by 8 o'clock, I just naturally get up, take my dog for a walk, go get a coffee, and
Pour over, French press, lattes. What are we
cold
talking?
brew from the coffee shop right below where I live.
Nice.
If you got the chance to start over, what would you do differently?
Not spend $50,000 on a real estate investment course, and I would take that money and I would say, "Hey, Matt, Ricardo, let's go JV on a deal."
That's definitely
Great idea. No. And on the acting side, what would you do if you started over? What would you do differently?
That's a good question. I would have. So there was remember Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah.
The TV show that was on for like 5 years. So I had auditioned for that back in the day and ended up passing on it. I was the guy that they wanted for the lead role, and my agent and I decided that this Fox TV show, which was about a family, was going to be more of a well-respected, more of a more watched show. At the time, Sci-Fi Channel was kind of not that, watched, and it wasn't that respected. And little did we know that Battlestar Galactica was going to go on to win all these, like, be critically acclaimed and win all these awards. And we kind of thought it might have been just some cheesy Star Trek kind of show. But if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have said, yeah, let's do the Battlestar Galactica.
What was the biggest? Because another question we ask is, what's your favorite failure? What have you learned from it? So, like that one, let's say, what did you learn from that experience that helped you?
Trust your instincts. Trust your instincts. It is nice to have mentors, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you're the one that has to live with the decision. And my agent has 30 other clients, so he's not the one that has to sit and live with that decision of saying no to something. And so, nowadays, I just check in with my gut and say, you know what, is this something that I really, truly want to do? There's a guy who wrote an article, it's called What's Your Hell Yeah? And if you look at any situation or a relationship or business opportunity, if you can't answer, is this a hell yeah, then it should be a no, because life is too short to be wasting your time on things that are, kind of.
I need to cut off a bunch of shit on my life.
And there's a publicist that I took a seminar with in Los Angeles, and one of the things he would say is, fire your flaky friends.
All right, thanks, man. Thank you for doing this. Really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
your time. Where can people find you online?
So they can go to my website, colinegglesfield.com, and on there there's a link to be able to check out my book, order it on Amazon, and I'm also about to release an online 6-week program myself called the Agile Artist in Action.
Nice.
And it essentially is a kickstart for anyone who's looking to do something in their life, that they have an idea that they've always wanted to turn into reality, whether it's like if you want to write a book, or if you always wanted to start your own business, or if you always wanted to sign up for a class or a real estate investment course, but you just haven't done it. This is a 6-week program that will give you the step-by-step program and the motivation and inspiration from the Agile Artist community to fulfill on whatever it is that you've always dreamed of doing.
All right. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Till next time. And that's it for another episode of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. One last thing before you head off, though. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us your thoughts on iTunes. It would really mean a lot and help us reach more people. You can also find us on Facebook at Profits Over Wages Podcast, as well as on Instagram and YouTube. Until next time.